for 7 years had walked through the same glass doors of industries. Every morning at 5, before the sun came up, he swiped his badge and entered through the back entrance. He pushed his cleaning cart down the long hallways, mopped the floors, emptied the trash bins, and wiped down the desks of people who never even knew his name. He was invisible. That was the truth of it. People walked past him like he was part of the furniture. Sometimes they would step right over his mop without saying, "Excuse me." Sometimes they would leave their coffee cups on the floor just inches away from the trash can, as if putting it inside was too much effort. Never complained. He just did his job, collected his paycheck, and went home to his small apartment on the edge of the city. But had not always been a janitor. There was a time, many years ago, when his life looked completely different. There was a time when people paid money to hear him do something extraordinary, but that was another life. A life he had buried so deep that even he sometimes forgot it was real. Now at 53 years old lived a quiet existence. He had his routines: wake up at 4, make instant coffee, take the bus to work, clean, go home, heat up leftovers, call his daughter, sleep, repeat. His daughter was the one bright spot in his world. Her name was Nora, and she was 24 years old. She worked as a nurse at a hospital downtown, and every Sunday she came over to cook dinner for her father. She worried about him living alone. She worried that he worked too hard. She worried that he had forgotten how to live for himself. Always told her the same thing. He was fine, he was happy, he had everything he needed. But Nora knew her father better than anyone. She knew that behind his calm smile there was a sadness he never talked about. A sadness that had lived in his eyes ever since her mother passed away 8 years ago. One Tuesday afternoon, something unusual happened at work. Was cleaning the 4th-floor break room when he noticed a fancy white envelope sitting on the counter. It had his name on it, not his badge number, not maintenance staff. His actual name, Price. He picked it up, confused. In 7 years, no one had ever sent him anything at work. He opened it carefully, as if it might be some kind of mistake. Inside was an invitation printed on thick, expensive paper. It announced the 50th anniversary gala of Industries. There would be dinner, music, and dancing at the Monarch Hotel downtown. And at the bottom, in elegant gold letters, it said that all employees were welcome to attend. All employees. Read it 3 times to make sure he understood. He had heard about these parties before. Every year, the company threw a big celebration for its top executives and important clients. But the cleaning staff had never been included. They were always scheduled to work those nights instead, setting up chairs and clearing plates after everyone else had their fun. This year was different. This year, someone had decided to invite everyone. Folded the invitation and put it in his pocket. He did not think much of it at first. He was not the kind of man who went to fancy parties. He did not own a suit. He did not know how to make small talk with executives. He would feel out of place, like a fish trying to walk on land. But that Sunday, when Nora came over for dinner, she saw the invitation sitting on his kitchen table. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, picking it up. Shrugged. "Some party at work. They invited everyone this year." Nora's eyes went wide. "This is at the Monarch Hotel. This is a huge deal. Are you going?" "No," said, stirring the pot of soup on the stove. "That's not for people like me." Nora put down the invitation and walked over to her father. She placed her hand on his arm and made him look at her. "What do you mean, people like you?" she asked softly. Sighed. "You know what I mean, sweetheart. I push a mop. Those people wear watches that cost more than my car. I would stick out like a sore thumb." "So what?" Nora said. "You work there too. You've worked there for 7 years. You keep that building running. You deserve to celebrate just as much as anyone else." Shook his head. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," Nora insisted. "Dad, when was the last time you did something for yourself? When was the last time you went somewhere nice and had a good time?" Did not answer. He could not remember. Nora squeezed his arm. Mom would want you to go, you know she would. That hit him right in the chest. His wife had always been the brave one. She was the one who pushed him to take chances, to believe in himself, to step outside his comfort zone. She would have dragged him to that party herself if she were still alive. Looked at his daughter, she had her mother's eyes, the same warmth, the same stubborn kindness. I don't have anything to wear, he said quietly. Nora smiled. We'll figure it out. The next day, Nora took her father to a thrift store on the other side of town. They spent 2 hours looking through racks of old suits until they found one that almost fit. It was charcoal gray with thin pinstripes. The sleeves were a little too long, and the pants needed to be taken in, but Nora said she could fix it. That night she sat at her kitchen table with a needle and thread, adjusting the suit by hand. Watched her work, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. He did not deserve a daughter this good. You don't have to do all this, he said. I want to, Nora replied without looking up. Besides, I want to see my dad looking handsome for once. Laughed for the first time in weeks. The night of the gala arrived faster than expected. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, wearing the thrift store suit and a tie Nora had picked out for him. He barely recognized himself. He looked almost like the man he used to be a long time ago. His hands were shaking as he buttoned his jacket. He told himself it was just nerves. He told himself it would be fine. He would show up, have a glass of water, stay for an hour and leave. No one would even notice he was there. He took a taxi to the Monarch Hotel because he did not trust his old car to make it downtown without breaking down. When the taxi pulled up to the entrance, his heart sank. The hotel was enormous. Crystal chandeliers glowed through the tall windows. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the golden front doors. Valets in crisp uniforms were parking luxury cars that probably cost more than its entire apartment building. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos walked inside with women wearing glittering gowns and expensive jewelry. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine. Sat frozen in the back of the taxi. Sir, the driver said, we're here. Nodded slowly. He paid the fare with the cash he had been saving for emergencies. Then he stepped out onto the sidewalk and stood there, staring at the entrance like it was the gate to another world. A woman in a silver dress glanced at him as she walked past. Her eyes moved over his thrift store suit, and for just a second, her expression flickered with something that looked like pity. Then she looked away and kept walking. Took a deep breath. He thought about turning around and going home. He thought about calling Nora and telling her he couldn't do it. But then he remembered what she had said. He worked there too. He deserved to celebrate too. He straightened his tie, he lifted his chin, and he walked through those golden doors. The ballroom inside was even more breathtaking than he had imagined. Hundreds of people filled the massive space, laughing and talking and clinking glasses. A jazz band played soft music in the corner. Waiters carried silver trays of food that could not even name. And there, in the center of the room, sat a beautiful grand piano. It was polished to perfection, gleaming under the lights like a piece of art. Stared at it for a long moment. Something stirred inside his chest, something old and buried and almost forgotten. He quickly looked away and moved toward the back of the room, hopping to find a quiet corner where he could disappear. He had no idea what was coming next. Found a spot near the back wall, close to the buffet table but far enough from the crowd that he hoped no one would pay attention to him. He picked up a small plate and pretended to examine the food, even though he had no idea what most of it was. There were tiny pieces of bread with strange toppings, vegetables cut into shapes he had never seen before, and some kind of meat wrapped in something green. He took a few safe-looking items and stood there, eating slowly, watching the party unfold around him. Everyone seemed to know each other. Groups of people stood in tight circles, laughing at jokes could not hear. Women complimented each other's dresses. Men shook hands and slapped each other on the back like old friends. The whole room buzzed with the easy confidence of people who belonged. Did not belong. He felt it in his bones. He felt it in the way his thrift store suit hung slightly wrong on his shoulders. He felt it in the way his shoes, which he had polished 3 times that morning, still looked old and worn compared to the shiny leather shoes around him. But he stayed. He had promised Nora he would try, so he stayed. For the first hour, things were fine. Kept to himself, moved around the edges of the room and avoided eye contact with anyone important. He even started to relax a little. Maybe this would not be so bad. Maybe he could just enjoy the music, have some food, and slip out quietly before anyone noticed. Then he heard the voice. "Wait a minute, is that who I think it is?" Looked up. A tall man in an expensive black suit was walking toward him, a glass of champagne in his hand and a smirk on his face. Recognized him immediately. His name was Gregory, and he was the vice president of marketing. Cleaned his office every night. He knew the man by the mess he left behind, crumpled papers on the floor, coffee rings on the desk, and sticky notes everywhere. Gregory was not alone. He had a small group of people following him, other executives who had seen in the hallways but never spoken to. They were all looking at now, their eyes moving over him like he was some kind of curiosity. "It is," Gregory said, stopping a few feet away. "It's the cleaning guy, right?" Nodded slowly. "That's right." Gregory turned to his friends with a wide grin. "Can you believe this? The janitor showed up to the gala." He said the word janitor the way someone might say insect, like it was something small and unpleasant. A woman in a red dress giggled. "I didn't know they invited the help." "Apparently they did this year," Gregory said. "Some new policy about inclusion or whatever, very progressive." He took a sip of his champagne, still smiling. "So, how does it feel to be on this side of the mop for once?" Felt his face grow warm. He wanted to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. He was not used to being the center of attention. He was not used to people looking at him at all. "I just came to enjoy the party," said quietly. "Same as everyone else." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Same as everyone else? Really?" He looked up and down, his eyes stopping on the suit. "Nice outfit, let me guess, Goodwill, or was it the Salvation Army?" The group laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the sharp, cutting laugh of people who had never been on the receiving end of that kind of cruelty. Said nothing. He just stood there, holding his plate of food, feeling smaller with every passing second. Another man from the group stepped forward. He was younger than Gregory, with slick-back hair and a shiny watch that probably cost more than made in a year. "Hey, I have a question," the young man said. "Did you wax the floors before you came tonight? I want to make sure I don't slip on my way to the bar." More laughter, louder this time. Set his plate down on the table. His hands were trembling, but not from fear. Something else was building inside him, something he had kept buried for a very long time. He thought about his wife. She had been gone for 8 years now, but he could still hear her voice as clearly as if she were standing right beside him. She used to tell him something whenever he faced difficult people. Dignity isn't something they can take from you. It's something you carry inside. And as long as you hold on to it, no one can ever make you small. He took a breath and looked Gregory directly in the eyes. "I did my job today," said calmly. "Same as I do every day, and I'll do it again tomorrow. There's no shame in honest work." Gregory's smile flickered for just a moment. He had expected to crumble, to apologize, to slink away in embarrassment. He had not expected this quiet resistance. "Honest work," Gregory repeated, his voice mocking. "Sure, whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy." He turned to walk away, but then he stopped. His eyes had landed on something across the room, the grand piano. "You know what would be hilarious?" Gregory said, turning back to. "You should play us a song. Give us some entertainment. I mean, you're used to serving us, right? Might as well do it in style tonight." The group burst into laughter again. "Come on, Gregory," the woman in the red dress said. "Leave the poor man alone." "No, no, I'm serious," Gregory continued. He was enjoying himself now, feeding off the attention. "Hey, do you even know what a piano is? Or do you just dust it off like everything else?" Looked at the piano. It sat in the center of the room, gleaming under the chandeliers. It was he could tell from here, a concert grand. The kind of instrument that cost more than most people's houses. The kind of instrument he had not touched in over a decade. His chest tightened. Memories flooded through him. The feel of ivory under his fingertips. The sound of music filling a concert hall. The applause of hundreds of people who had come just to hear him play. That was another life. A life he had walked away from. A life he had tried to forget. "I know what a piano is," said quietly. Gregory laughed. "Oh, do you? What, did you play chopsticks at a school recital once?" He elbowed the man next to him. "This guy probably thinks is a dog from a movie." The joke got the biggest laugh yet. Felt something shift inside him. It was like a door that had been locked for years was slowly starting to open. Behind that door were memories he had hidden away, dreams he had abandoned, and a version of himself he had tried to bury. He looked at Gregory and the group of executives still laughing at him. He looked at the other guests nearby who had overheard the conversation and were whispering among themselves. He saw the pity in some of their eyes, the amusement in others. They all saw the same thing when they looked at him. A janitor, a nobody, a man who did not belong. They had no idea who he really was. Turned away from the group and started walking. Not toward the exit like everyone expected, not toward the back of the room to hide. He walked toward the piano. The laughter behind him faded into confused silence. People turned to watch him. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "What is he doing?" someone asked. "Is he actually going to play?" another voice said. Gregory called out from behind him. "Hey, I was joking. You don't have to embarrass yourself." But kept walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, like he was moving through water. His heart was pounding in his chest. His palms were starting to sweat. He reached the piano and stopped. He stood there for a moment just looking at it. The polished black surface reflected the lights above. The keys were perfect, white and black, waiting in silence. Pulled out the bench and sat down. The room had gone quiet now. Everyone was watching. Even the jazz band had stopped playing. Placed his hands on the keys. They felt familiar, like meeting an old friend after years apart. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. In his mind, he was not in a ballroom full of strangers. He was somewhere else, somewhere far away and long ago. He was sitting in a concert hall in Vienna, 25 years old, about to perform the piece that would change his life. He opened his eyes. And then he began to play. The first note cut through the silence like a knife. It was soft, almost hesitant, like was testing the waters, remembering how it felt to touch a piano after so many years. Then came the second note, and the third, and suddenly the music began to flow. Was playing Chopin, Ballade No. 1 in G minor, one of the most difficult and emotional pieces ever written for piano. It was the kind of music that separated amateurs from masters, the kind of music that took years to learn and a lifetime to truly understand. And was playing it like he had been born for it. The opening was gentle, almost like a whisper. The notes floated through the ballroom, delicate and sad, telling a story without words. People stopped talking. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the waiters paused, trays balanced in their hands, unable to move. Gregory stood near the buffet table, his smirk slowly fading. He had expected to embarrass himself. He had expected clumsy fingers stumbling over the keys, maybe a few awkward notes before the janitor gave up and walked away in shame. This was not that. This was something else entirely. His fingers moved across the keys with a grace that seemed impossible. His eyes were closed, his body swaying gently with the rhythm. He was not just playing the music, he was living it. Every note carried weight. Every phrase told a story of loss and longing and hope. The ballroom had gone completely still. 300 people stood frozen, watching a man they had overlooked for 7 years create something beautiful. A woman near the front put her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were already wet with tears. She did not know why she was crying. She just knew that the music was reaching something deep inside her, something she had forgotten was there. The piece grew more intense. Hands moved faster now, the melody building and swelling like a wave. The notes crashed over each other, powerful and urgent, filling every corner of the massive room. It was the sound of a storm, the sound of a heart breaking and putting itself back together. People started to whisper. "Who is he? I thought he was a janitor. How is this possible?" But most people did not speak at all. They just listened. They let the music wash over them and carry them somewhere far away. In the middle of the room, an older man in a perfectly tailored suit stood watching with tears streaming down his face. His name was Richard, and he was the CEO of Industries. He was the one who had started this company 50 years ago with nothing but a dream and a small loan from his mother. His mother, that was why he was crying. She had been a concert pianist. She had played this exact piece for him when he was a boy, sitting beside her on the piano bench in their tiny apartment, watching her fingers dance across the keys. She had died 15 years ago, but he still heard her music in his dreams. And now, here was this man, this janitor, playing her favorite piece with the same beauty and passion she once had. Richard could not look away. Did not see any of this. His eyes were still closed. In his mind, he was not in a ballroom surrounded by strangers. He was somewhere else, somewhere long ago. He was 23 years old again, sitting on stage at a concert hall in Vienna. The seats were filled with people who had paid good money to hear him play. Critics from major newspapers sat in the front row, their pens ready. This was supposed to be his big break, the performance that would launch his career. And it had been for a while. After Vienna, the offers came flooding in. Invitations to play in Paris, London, New York, recording contracts, magazine interviews. Everyone wanted to know about the young American pianist who played Chopin like he had a direct line to the composer's soul. Had everything he ever wanted, fame, success, a future brighter than he had ever imagined. And then he met her. Her name was Grace. She was a nurse at a small hospital in Philadelphia, and she had no idea who was when they first met. She did not care about his concerts or his reviews or his growing reputation. She just saw a tired young man sitting alone in a hospital waiting room, worried about his father who had just had a heart attack. She brought him coffee. They talked for hours, and by the end of that night knew his life would never be the same. They got married a year later, kept performing, traveling the world, playing to sold-out crowds, but something had changed. The music was no longer the most important thing in his life. Grace was. Then Grace got sick. It started with headaches, then fatigue, then the diagnosis that shattered everything, a rare disease, no cure. The doctors gave her 5 years, maybe less. Canceled his next tour, then the one after that. He stopped taking calls from agents and managers. He stopped practicing. He stopped everything. For the next 4 years, he stayed by her side. He held her hand through the treatments that made her weak. He read to her when she could not sleep. He learned to cook her favorite meals when she could no longer stand long enough to make them herself. When their daughter Nora was born, Grace cried for an entire day. She had not expected to live long enough to become a mother. She called it her miracle. Grace lived for 3 more years after that. 3 beautiful, painful, precious years. And when she finally passed, was holding her hand, just like he had promised. After the funeral, did not touch a piano for months. The music reminded him too much of the life he used to have. The life before Grace. the life that seemed hollow and meaningless compared to what he had found with her. He needed work. He needed something to keep him going, something to fill the hours and pay the bills. Industries was hiring janitors. No experience required. Steady hours. Good benefits. Took the job and never looked back. Until tonight. The music reached its final movement. His fingers flew across the keys, faster and more powerful than before. The melody soared, filling the ballroom with sound so beautiful it almost hurt to hear. People were openly crying now. Men and women who ran billion-dollar companies, who negotiated deals and fired employees without blinking, stood there with tears running down their cheeks. Gregory had backed away into the crowd. His face was pale. He looked like a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake. Played the final chord. The note hung in the air for a long moment, echoing off the walls, slowly fading into silence. Then nothing. Complete, absolute silence. Opened his eyes. For a moment, he did not know where he was. The music had taken him so far away that coming back felt like waking from a dream. He looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces stared back at him. Some were crying. Some had their mouths hanging open. Some looked like they had just witnessed something impossible. His hands were shaking, not from nerves this time, from something else, from the feeling of doing something he had not done in over a decade, from the release of emotions he had kept locked away for so long. The silence stretched on, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then someone started clapping. It was slow at first, just one person somewhere in the back of the room. Then another joined in, and another, and suddenly the entire ballroom erupted. The applause was deafening. People were cheering, shouting, some even standing on their chairs to get a better look at the man sitting at the piano. Sat there overwhelmed. He had not expected this. He had not expected any of this. He had just wanted to prove to himself that he still remembered, that the music was still inside him, even after all these years. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that pushed a mop every day, the same hands that had held his wife as she took her last breath. They were still shaking, and for the first time in a very long time, felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt alive. The applause went on and on. It filled the ballroom like thunder, bouncing off the walls and the high ceiling, surrounding from every direction. People were on their feet now, clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Others just stood there shaking their heads in disbelief. Did not know what to do. He sat frozen at the piano bench, his hands still resting on the keys, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He had not played for an audience in over 12 years. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to have people listen, to have people care. Slowly he stood up. His legs felt weak, like they might give out at any moment. He turned to face the crowd, and the applause grew even louder. Someone in the back whistled. Another person shouted something he could not quite hear. Then the crowd began to part. A man was walking toward him. He moved slowly, deliberately, like every step carried great weight. People stepped aside to let him through, their applause softening as they watched. Recognized him immediately. It was Richard, the founder and CEO of Industries. Had seen his picture on the walls of the building hundreds of times. He had cleaned the man's corner office on the top floor, dusting the awards and photographs that lined the shelves. But he had never spoken to him, not once in 7 years. Richard stopped a few feet away from, up close, could see that the older man's eyes were red and wet. Tears had left tracks down his weathered cheeks. He was trying to compose himself, but his emotions were clearly overwhelming him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The ballroom had gone quiet again, everyone watching, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. "That piece," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "That was my mother's favorite. She used to play it for me when I was a boy. I haven't heard it performed like that since she passed away 15 years ago. Did not know what to say. He had not known about the CEO's mother. He had simply chosen the piece because it was the one closest to his heart, the one that had launched his career so many years ago. "I'm sorry for your loss," said quietly. "She must have been a wonderful woman." Richard nodded slowly. "She was. She taught me everything I know about beauty and art and the things in life that truly matter." He paused, studying his face. "Who are you? Where did you learn to play like that?" The question hung in the air. Around them, people leaned in, desperate to hear the answer. Took a breath. For so many years, he had kept his past hidden. He had buried that part of himself so deep that he almost believed it was gone forever. But tonight, something had cracked open. The music had broken through the walls he had built, and now there was no going back. "My name is Price," he said. "I've worked in your building for 7 years. I'm part of the janitorial staff." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Richard's eyebrows rose in surprise. "The janitorial staff," he repeated. "You clean our building?" "Yes, sir, every night." Richard shook his head slowly as if he could not quite believe what he was hearing. But that music, that wasn't amateur playing. That was concert level, world class. "Where did you train?" Hesitated. Then he said the word he had not spoken in years. The murmur became a gasp. Was one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Getting accepted was nearly impossible. Graduating was even harder. "I studied there in my 20s, continued. "After I graduated, I performed professionally. Concert halls in Europe mostly, Vienna, Paris, London." Richard stared at him. "You performed in Vienna?" "Yes, sir. That's where I played this piece for the first time. It was supposed to be my breakthrough performance." Paused, the memories flooding back. "It was for a while." "What happened?" Richard asked. "Why did you stop?" Looked down at his hands. The same hands that had just created such beautiful music. The same hands that would go back to pushing a mop tomorrow morning. "My wife got sick," he said simply. "She needed me, so I stopped performing. I stopped everything. I took care of her until the end." The ballroom was completely silent now. No one moved. No one whispered. Everyone was listening to this man in a thrift store suit tell the story of how he gave up everything for love. "After she passed," continued, "I didn't touch a piano for a long time. The music reminded me too much of everything I had lost. I needed work, something to keep me going. Your company gave me a job when no one else would. I've been grateful for that every single day." Richard's eyes glistened with fresh tears. He reached out and placed his hand on shoulder. "You gave up your career," Richard said softly. "You gave up fame and success and everything you had worked for, all for your wife." Nodded. "She was worth it. Every moment I spent with her was worth more than any concert I ever played." Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to look at the crowd behind him. His eyes found Gregory, who was standing near the back, trying to make himself invisible. "Gregory," Richard called out. His voice was calm but carried an edge that made people uncomfortable. "Come here." Gregory's face went pale. He hesitated, then slowly walked forward, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. He stopped a few feet away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "This is the man you were mocking earlier, isn't it?" Richard asked. "The janitor you thought was beneath you." Gregory swallowed hard. "Sir, it was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it." "A joke," Richard repeated. He turned back to. "This man sacrificed a brilliant career to care for his dying wife. He has worked in our building for 7 years, keeping it clean, keeping it running, never asking for recognition or praise. And you thought it was funny to humiliate him in front of everyone." Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I built this company on the belief that every person has value," Richard continued. "That success isn't about the title on your business card or the size of your paycheck. It's about character. It's about how you treat people." He looked Gregory directly in the eyes. "You should be ashamed of yourself." Gregory's face burned red. He nodded quickly, mumbling something that might have been an apology, then backed away into the crowd. People stepped aside to let him pass, but no one looked at him with respect anymore. Richard turned back too, his expression softened. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not for anything I did personally, but for allowing a culture to exist where someone like you could be overlooked for so long. You've been walking through my building for 7 years, and I never once took the time to learn your name. That's my failure." Shook his head. "You don't owe me anything, sir. I was happy with my job, I still am." "But you deserve more," Richard said. "A man with your talent, your character, your story. You deserve so much more." Before could respond, he felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw his daughter's name on the screen. Nora was calling. "Excuse me," said, "it's my daughter." Richard nodded. "Of course, take it." Stepped away from the crowd and answered the phone. "Dad," Nora's voice was excited, almost frantic. "Dad, what happened? Someone from your company just called me. They said you played piano at the gala. They said it was incredible." Smiled. It was the first real smile he had worn in a long time. "It's a long story, sweetheart." "Are you okay? You sound different." Looked back at the ballroom, at the grand piano gleaming under the lights, at Richard still standing nearby, watching him with something like admiration in his eyes, at the hundreds of people who now saw him not as a janitor but as something more. "I'm okay," said. "I think I'm more okay than I've been in years." "Dad, I'm so proud of you. Mom would have been so proud of you." Felt his throat tighten. He blinked back the tears that were forming in his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I think maybe that's why I finally played again. I think she was with me tonight." Nora was crying now. He could hear it in her voice, but they were good tears, happy tears. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart. I'll tell you everything when I get home." He hung up the phone and stood there for a moment, just breathing. The night air from an open window somewhere cooled his face. He could hear the soft murmur of the crowd behind him, still talking about what had just happened. Then he felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Richard standing beside him. "The CEO said, I'd like to speak with you tomorrow, in my office. Would that be all right?" Nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I'll be there." Richard smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and kind. "Good, because I have an idea, and I think you're going to want to hear it." Did not sleep that night. He lay in his small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the gala in his mind. The music, the silence, the applause, the tears in Richard's eyes, the look on Gregory's face. It all felt like a dream, like something that had happened to someone else. But it was real. His fingers still tingled from touching the piano keys. His heart still felt lighter than it had in years. When the sun came up, got out of bed and made his instant coffee like he always did. He put on his work clothes, the same faded blue uniform he had worn for 7 years. Then he took the bus to Industries, just like every other morning. But today was different. Today people noticed him. The security guard at the front desk, who had never said more than a grunt to in all these years, stood up and smiled when he walked in. "Good morning, Mr. Price," he said. "That was some performance last night." Blinked in surprise. "Thank you, how did you know about it?" The guard laughed. "Are you kidding? Everyone knows. There's a video going around. Someone recorded the whole thing on their phone. It's all anyone's talking about." Felt his face grow warm. He had not expected this. He had not expected any of this. As he walked through the building, more people stopped to greet him. Executives he had never spoken to shook his hand. Secretaries smiled at him in the elevator. A young woman from accounting told him she had watched the video 3 times and cried every single time. By the time reached his supply closet, his head was spinning. This was not the invisible life he had grown used to. This was something else entirely. He had just started loading his cleaning cart when his supervisor appeared in the doorway. She said, "Mr. wants to see you right now in his office." Stomach tightened. He had known this moment was coming, but that did not make it any less nerve-wracking. He set down his mop and followed his supervisor to the elevator. The ride to the top floor felt like it lasted forever. Watched the numbers climb higher and higher, his reflection staring back at him in the polished metal doors. He still looked the same. Same tired eyes, same gray hair, same worn uniform. But something inside him had changed. He could feel it. The elevator doors opened, and stepped out into a world he had only ever seen while pushing a vacuum cleaner. The executive floor was all glass and marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. Expensive artwork hung on the walls. The carpet was so thick his feet sank into it with every step. Richard's assistant led him to the corner office and opened the door. "Mr. Price is here, sir." Richard looked up from his desk and smiled. "Please come in, have a seat." Walked in and sat down in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Richard dismissed his assistant and closed the door behind her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Richard just studied with a thoughtful expression, like he was trying to figure something out. "I watched the video this morning," Richard finally said. "Someone posted it online last night. It already has over 2 million views." His jaw dropped. 2 million. Richard nodded. "People are calling it one of the most beautiful performances they've ever seen. News outlets are picking up the story. The janitor who played Chopin and made a room full of executives cry." He leaned back in his chair. "You're famous again, whether you wanted to be or not." Did not know what to say. Fame was not something he had ever chased. It was not something he wanted now. All he had wanted was to play, to remember what it felt like, to honor the man he used to be, even if just for one night. "I didn't do it for attention," said quietly. I needed to remember." Richard nodded slowly. "I understand. But here's the thing. What you did last night, it mattered. Not just to you, to everyone who saw it. You reminded people that there's more to life than job titles and bank accounts. You showed them that beauty can come from the most unexpected places." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "My mother started a foundation before she died," Richard continued. "The Arts Foundation. It was supposed to support musicians and artists, help young people pursue their dreams. But after she passed, I let it fade. I got too busy with the company, too focused on profits and growth. I forgot what really mattered to her." He turned back to face. "I want to bring it back. I want to rebuild the foundation and make it everything my mother dreamed it could be, and I want you to lead it." Stared at him. "Me." "You," Richard said. "You have the talent, the experience, and most importantly, the heart. You understand what it means to sacrifice for something you love. You understand what it means to struggle and still keep going. That's exactly the kind of person I need." His mind was racing. This was not what he had expected. He had thought maybe Richard wanted to thank him personally or perhaps offer him a small bonus. But this was life-changing. "I don't know what to say," admitted. Richard smiled. "Say yes. Say you'll help me build something meaningful. Say you'll use your gift to help others find theirs." Thought about his life. The small apartment, the bus rides, the mop and bucket waiting for him downstairs. He had been content with that life. He had told himself it was enough. But maybe it was not enough. Maybe he had been hiding. Maybe he had been so afraid of feeling again that he had stopped living altogether. He thought about Grace. What would she say if she were here right now? He already knew the answer. She would tell him to take the chance. She would tell him that his music was too beautiful to keep hidden. She would tell him that helping others find their dreams was the best way to honor hers. "I'll do it," said, "but I have one condition." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Name it." The foundation needs to include scholarships for kids whose parents work jobs like mine: janitors, cafeteria workers, security guards, the people who keep buildings running but never get noticed. Their children deserve a chance to dream too. Richard's smile widened. I wouldn't have it any other way. They shook hands. It was official. 1 month later, the Arts Foundation relaunched with as its director. The announcement made headlines across the country. The video of his performance had been viewed over 50 million times by then. Interview requests poured in from television shows and magazines. Everyone wanted to know the story of the janitor who became a sensation, but did not do many interviews. He was too busy. He spent his days meeting with young musicians, reviewing scholarship applications, and planning concerts that would raise money for the foundation. And every evening, he sat at the piano in his new office and played. Not for fame, not for applause, just for the love of music. Nora came to visit him at his new office one Sunday afternoon. She stood in the doorway, watching her father play, tears streaming down her face. Mom would be so proud, she said when he finished. Looked at his daughter. She had her mother's eyes, the same warmth, the same stubborn kindness. I know, he said. I feel her with me every time I play. He stood up and hugged his daughter tightly. Outside the window, the city stretched out beneath them, full of people living their lives, chasing their dreams, struggling and hopping and trying again. Had been one of them once, invisible, overlooked, forgotten. But not anymore. He had learned something important that night at the gala, something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. It does not matter what title the world gives you. It does not matter if people see you or ignore you. What matters is what you carry inside, the love you have given, the sacrifices you have made, the beauty you are still capable of creating. Price had been a janitor. Now he was something more. But the truth was, he had always been something more. He just needed to remember it. And every time he sat down at a piano, he remembered. He remembered Grace. He remembered his daughter. He remembered the man he used to be and the man he had become. And he played.